When 1722 hits, the Europeans arrive, of course, and find these 2,000 to 3,000 people living in the middle of the ocean. And this is when they basically kill them all.
Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. All right, let's get started. The colonial era began in approximately 1478 and lasted well into the end of the 1900s, when decolonization efforts began to take place. This era was dominated by European Moors, characterized by the large empires spawned from states like Spain, Portugal, France, the UK, and the Netherlands. In fact, over the course of this 400 years, only 5 countries completely escaped European influence. The colonial expansion of European Moors had its foundations in brutality, not limited to such things as forced removal of indigenous people, separation of families, and in some extreme cases, even genocide.
There are no tunnel networks underground. Don't be ridiculous.
So you're ignoring the accounts from the men who found them?
Well, what are you talking about?
1993, Peter Parkinson's guy worked for the subway stations in Manhattan, and that's how he found it.
Found what, damn it?
One night, as he's servicing the tracks, miles deep inside a tunnel, he noticed something on the wall. Deviation in the brick material used on one specific section said it almost outlined like a
outlined what?
A door, like an opening, like a gateway. Once he saw it, he could never unsee it. Drove him crazy every time he'd passed it. So one night he snaps, goes with 2 coworkers and a bunch of demolition equipment, and they spend hours knocking it down. Eventually they broke through. Lo and behold, a tunnel leading to God knows where. One of Pete's friends looks at him at this point and goes, "Listen, Pete, we did it. It's probably just a tunnel they closed off years ago. Probably just leads to the Upper West Side Station or something. Like, let's get out of here." And Pete just looks at him with a blank face and goes, "Buddy, we're on the north bank of the subway system. This tunnel's headed due north. There are no other stations down here." And as he just starts walking down and he says, "Suit yourself, but I'm going to find out what in God's name is going on here." They both go with him, and after miles of walking, they finally reach an opening. They don't say anything for a few minutes. They just stare aimlessly into the abyss of a massive underground city, fully functioning society, traffic. Pete breaks the silence with a look of horrified confusion and says, "Boys, where the hell are we?" They manage to hike down and get into the city, and as they're standing there in awe, they're kind of snapped out of it by a city bus driver yelling at them going, "You boys getting on, or what I don't got all day, you're standing in the damn pickup zone." They just kind of look at each other and at a loss of direction. They get on the bus, and the strange part is they said it was just like Manhattan. Like, the people walking around didn't have some kind of dystopian blank stare. They were like regular city people just living their lives. But as they're sitting on the bus, this almost creepy, wide-eyed old man is kind of staring them down and eventually says to them, "Out-of-towners." They just freeze up, and the tone in the air just kind of shifts before they can respond. The guy goes, "Don't worry, I won't tell." Says, "It's not down here you need to worry about. It's up there." Peter just says back to him, "Sir, what do you know about this place? Where the hell are we?" Guy just starts eerily laughing uncontrollably. And half an hour later, they're all sitting at a diner uptown. The man says that this place has been around since the 1950s, that when the world had began to succumb to the inevitable deception by secret societies, a subset of highly intellectual and powerful people saw it coming. The founding family of this city, the Vanderleys. Back in the 40s, they owned what is the present-day subway station infrastructure in Manhattan. As the decade went on, tensions between the Vanderleys and fellow elite families were rising. They didn't like what the others were doing, deceiving nations, seizing control over institutions from the shadows. And so, after too many deceptive events to forgive, the Vanderleys sat in their family's mansion and argued over what course of action to take against these other families. Jared Vanderlei Jr. was hellbent. He told his father, "We must expose them publicly. We'll turn the people against them. Without influence, they'll have nothing." His father said to him, "You don't get it yet, do you? They own the papers, half the country's politicians. Those shiny televisions they've put in each household are the only thing loud enough for these people to believe." Junior says, "So what do you suggest we do, Father? Let the world crumble in the palm of their hand?" As Jared Sr. pulls out the blueprints for his vast underground city, he says, "My dear boy, it already has. A breath of fresh air washed over the entire family. As Jared Sr. explained, he'd began the construction for a vast city underneath Manhattan years prior, leveraging their already existing real estate in the train stations that ran underground. He said to them, "You can't defeat the devil in his playground. You can only choose to leave." Jared Jr. said, "But Father, what about everyone else? What are we if we are to only save ourselves?" His father said he'd been culminating a mass exodus, a large group of others who'd understood what was truly happening in the world as well.
Here's how colonial powers twisted science for control. Colonial powers didn't just conquer lands, they exploited science to cement their rule. Picture this: European scientists classifying plants and minerals but ignoring indigenous knowledge. Even Darwin's famous voyage on the HMS Beagle wasn't just about evolution, it was a British mission to survey and exploit South America. Botanical gardens? More like economic treasure troves for colonizers.
Let me say something to y'all. The white man telling you that he took over folk ish like that and he was so powerful, like 300 Spartans. 300 white dudes with swords went and took over damn near most of the Middle East and Persia. Yeah, you stupid if you believe that. See, what they took over was history and the written text, which is why I don't fuck with history and what they writing and people talking about where your sources, all that shit lies.
Located over 2,200 miles off the coast of Chile, one of the most isolated places in the world, we have Easter Island, where the mainstream history tells us that the island has over 1,000 stone-carved massive heads, averaging 13 feet in height, that we are told were probably carved to commemorate important ancestors from around 1,000 years ago. Probably. Maybe. And I probably have some questions, and we're probably gonna shred this narrative. When self-proclaimed experts, people that were not there, just like you and me, these experts disagree with each other on when the island inhabitants first reached the island, while many in the research community think that they arrived in the year 800, 1,200 years ago. But the 2007 people think that they arrived in the year 1,200, 800 years ago, when those people in the 800s were, of course, master stone carvers out in the middle of the ocean, just to show appreciation to their ancestors, which we all do today, of course. So then the mainstream just skips hundreds of years ahead to the year 1722, leaving out a 900 to 500 year timeline gap, because nothing important happened for 900 years. And we have this fully documented. No. When 1722 hits, the Europeans arrive, of course, and find these 2,000 to 3,000 people living in the middle of the ocean. And this is when they basically kill them all. Literally 11 years later, in 1888, Chile annexed Easter Island by forcible acquisition over one's territory. So we have some very trustworthy things happening here. Lots of nice meetings, some great discussions, some murder, and some land takeovers. We are told that in the 1860s, this was when the population of Easter Island was depleted, and the Chilean government annexed the island 20 years later. Incredible. Where we get a tale of their destruction. And remember, this story is most likely complete nonsense, but it says in 1868 that the Bishop of Tahiti was given the wooden boards covered in this hieroglyphic writing, and none of the natives were capable of translating the writing. Well, they weren't capable because they were all dead from the Europeans, so of course they couldn't translate anything.
A colonizationist is a person who supports colonization, which is the act of one nation controlling another people or area. Colonizers often use force to take control of a country or area, and then send people from their own country to live there.
After his disappearance, I became obsessed with the things he'd told me, and how, in God's name, my best friend, the most sane man I've ever met, randomly disappears after telling me there's a camouflage tunnel in a subway station that leads to a city created by the Vanderleys. So I had spent the next year doing as much research on this family as I possibly could. They were this incredibly wealthy family back in the 1940s. They owned the Manhattan subway station infrastructure at the time, called the Vanderlei Express. Family was huge, had everything going for them. And suddenly, in 49, they all disappeared. Articles say there was a tragic house fire at their mansion. Happened conveniently during one of their annual family gatherings. Everything started adding up. Peter's story started to eerily match up with actual real-world events. And so eventually, I went back down to that subway station with a demolition truck to see for myself.
Colonization can also take the form of settler colonialism, where the colonizers invade and occupy a territory, replacing the existing society with their own. This can sometimes lead to the genocide of the native population.
The people that came with technology said, look, in order for you to pass on and be a god with a greater body, you got to have self-discipline. That's too hard, man. The law too hard. They literally telling me, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. I want to kill people and steal their land because I'm a white supremacist and I'm a colonizer. So as a colonizer, I got to do away with that law that's saying thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal, because that's exactly what I'm about to do when I go take these black people's land. So the people that founded this land, we think they was Christians, but they was the synagogue of Satan. The end goal of the Bible is Jesus coming to the earth to establish a technological kingdom where every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess. Why? Because basically all of the religions in the world that's under the Abrahamic faith, they all gonna build a wall around they shit and chip everybody up, and all of them gonna be interconnected via Neuralink with one world, unified, new world order.
You got the powers that be have been destroying civilizations since the beginning of time. That's what they do. They kill, they pillage, they rape, they take, and what they can't destroy, they just try to hide it.
In the United States, the American Colonization Society, ACS, was formed and supported by many people, including President Thomas Jefferson. The ACS's goal was to move the so-called free black population, who were really the native indigenous people, out of the country.
Guess who was the leader pilot in that fleet that went through the portal? Christopher Columbus. That's why they still to this day give him respect, because Christopher Columbus was leading the fleet of spaceships that came through the original portals in the Caucasus Mountains. And when they came in them same regular airplanes you see today. The same helicopters and them same airplanes you see today that people fly when they hop in, that's what they came in. They got you thinking the Wright brothers created the planes. More lies. FBI know this. CIA know this too. The Wright brothers ain't create them. They got you thinking this shit that was going on in Egypt with the pyramids was 6,000 years ago. Nigga. If you do want to put a year on it, it was about 250 years ago.
Ancient world, ancient Egypt, ancient Israel, ancient Assyria, ancient Babylon, ancient Mesopotamia, all that shit is over here. Those places didn't become that until after 1900. Mauritania is in Texas. All of that is in Texas, according to the House Congressional Record of the annexation of Texas of 1845. It says that the land belongs to the ancient Mauritanian races, the Moorish peoples, and their Indian associates. Greece wasn't established until 1971. Mauritania over there wasn't established until 1972 or some shit. Egypt wasn't established until the 50s. Saudi Arabia wasn't established to the 50s. There was no Israel on the planet after the fall of the first one, allegedly. We're just really using terms like Israel, Abraham, Hebrew. We're using these as placeholders for the original words that we don't even remember now.
When they be out on the History Channel, dinosaurs existed 80 million years ago. Years aren't even real, boy. They are lying. They created the Gregorian calendar. A man created the Gregorian calendar that you use today to count time. The time you count today, yeah, it's 60 seconds in a minute. It's 60 minutes in an hour. It's 24 hours in a day. It's 7 days in a week. It's 4 weeks in a month. It's 12 months in a year. It's 365 days in a year. Except for a leap year, it's 366. Who taught you that?
You're saying the Vanderlei family created this city underneath Manhattan back in the 40s, that they did this to evade being overtaken by secret societies. that they owned the early subway stations in Manhattan and dug a miles-long tunnel underneath it where they built this city. And your friend, Peter, discovered it. He found this tunnel, found the city, came back, and told you everything, and disappeared days later.
Exactly. And so after I'd spent years researching the Vanderlei family, I went back to the Bedford Park station where Peter said the tunnel was to see for myself. Brought demolition equipment with me and spent hours knocking down the bricks. And as I'd finally started seeing the tunnel behind the wall, I couldn't believe my eyes. Cleared it enough to allow myself to crawl through and walked for what felt like hours down this dark tunnel. My plan was simple. Get in, document enough footage to convince NYPD that this place actually existed, and get out. They were tyrannical and posed a threat to the city. Or so I thought. The tunnel finally came to a halt. And lo and behold, I was overlooking an unfathomably massive city miles underground. All I could think about was Peter. Crazy son of a bitch wasn't lying after all. Took an obnoxious amount of pictures, but I felt like I needed more to convince police. I hiked down and made my way into the city. Tried to stay low-key and unnoticed as I'd lurked the streets, snapping as many photos as I could until a familiar voice called out from behind me and sent shivers down my spine. "Shouldn't be here, Tommy," he'd said to me softly. I turned around to confirm what I already knew. It was Peter. Couldn't believe my eyes. Felt like I was looking at a ghost. Before I could respond, he goes, "I told you what they do to outsiders, Tommy. What are you doing with that camera?" He goes, "Whoa there, Tommy. I can't let you do that. There's things about this place you don't understand. Things I hadn't told you." I go, "Things I don't understand? Listen to yourself, Peter. You came back to seek refuge from people who killed your friends. You're pathetic." He goes, "Listen, we have ruthless ways here, but it's necessary." I go, "We? You think you're part of the little exclusive Vanderlei club now? These people have blood on their hands, Pete. Don't be on the wrong side of history when it comes to a head." He goes, "Look, Tommy, you only know that this place does exist, but you don't know why." I say to him, "What are you going to explain away my confusion and finish me swiftly like they did Joey and Mark? Save it. You already told me what they told you. Vanderleis were afraid of neighboring secret societies, so they created their own. This doesn't make them better. It makes them cowards." This is where he says to me, "You don't get it, Tommy. We're not safe up there. Something's coming. Something catastrophic. The Vanderleis knew things only the wealthiest elite of our world knew. Things that had went back to the beginning of our times. When these people first conquered our known lands, they came from places beyond, Tommy, the unknown lands." I said to him, "Unknown lands? What the hell are you talking about, Pete?" He goes, "Listen, everything you know about our world is a fabrication, conceived only to keep your mind and body trapped. Our world is not what you think, Tommy. It's far more vast than you've been led to believe. We're taught the world has 7 continents, but there's far more, Tommy. Hundreds more." I say to him, "What, that's impossible. We'd know about this." He goes, "No, we wouldn't, Tommy. When the lie has been orchestrated well enough, it becomes the truth. Listen, Antarctica is not the ice cap you've been led to believe, okay, but rather a 360-degree ice mass in which we are inside of." He goes, "Beyond it, Tommy. Beyond it is where our settlers came from. The Vanderleis were one of 7 families who came into this region of the world. They navigated over our ice wall through oceanic passageways and found our lands, the 7 continents that were inside. Each one of the 7 families claimed a continent and had a pact to command and conquer this new world. But as the millenniums passed, tensions rose. Certain families clicked up and became Machiavellian, wanting even more concentrated power, darker agendas that they knew particular families would oppose. I cut Peter off at that point and said, "What kind of darker agendas?" He continued and said, "Great resets, Tommy. Great resets. They would cyclically reset their own populations, an act of dominance, for control over problematic subsets of their own populations. At first, the tyrannical families would do this on their own turfs, but eventually wanted every family complicit in the protocol. The Vanderleis, however, wanted no parts of this, which is what led to the infiltration. These power-hungry families began a decades-long covert process of overtaking the Vanderleis continent, our continent. When the Vanderleis realized what was happening, they tried to send a voyage out back over the ice wall, but realized the other families had collapsed. all of the exit passages. There was no way out, so they went down. He goes, Tommy, the greatest reset they've ever executed is coming.
It is only you humans against those who pull the strings from the dark today, called custodians, the watchers, caretakers, the corrupt brotherhood, the tree protectors, cuijas, the energy absorbers, and I think I have heard many other terms, but we will stick with the first of them. Although I usually call them the parasitic race, it fits them perfectly. Nos confunden. They are here since almost the beginning of humanity, and whether we like it or not, they manage and have control of these lands today. Can anything be done against this? The answer is simple. Yes, but for that, we have to go into many points and find many of their weaknesses as well as strengths. Knowing the enemy is the best way to get to break free from their control and or end up defeating them.
This isn't just our war. The enemy we're up against is after everyone, all of them thinking as one. Whatever one sees, they all see. Whatever one hears, they all hear.
So you can look at it like this, but we inside of that. So you gotta be asking yourself, how does your planet look? How does the plane look? You're inside of the plane. And we are literally surrounded by a wall of ice. All right, this is the great ice wall of Antarctica that everybody talks about. The big fear of Antarctica, they trying to make it sound like they don't know why the ice walls is melting. All right, so, anywho.